Hi there, welcome to the first of today's 10-minute moans, and the topic of this 10-minute moan is an absolute crank who is at the heart of the SNP Scottish Government's identifying Scottish currency policy. This guy is the advisor to the SNP Scottish Government on currency, the new Scottish currency. And I don't have a clue who the guy was. He might not even be still in that position, but he was in that position, and I think he still is in that position. And I came across him last night, and he was talking about one thing, which was Gaza and Israel, and it got me thinking, who is this guy? And I've done a bit of diving into him, and I've established he says some absolutely bonkers things about the thing that's meant to be his specialist subject, which is currency. And not only that, he's got some strange beliefs about the Israeli-Gaza conflict. So what happened last night was Mark Fairbairn, who is a Twitter guy, an ex-Space host and a podcaster like myself, guy that I know, guy that I would term as a friend. I've known Mark a short time, but I've spoke to him more in the last 9 months than I have some friends that I've had for 9 years. So I know him quite well. And we get on fine. So Mark took to Twitter to make a comment about the 6 hostages in Gaza that were found murdered. And his tweet says, 6 hostages found in Gaza murdered. Where's the outrage? Where's the flags? Where's the protests? The left and the likes of him are useless, and his wife's deafening silence is noticeable and says everything. Which is not an abnormal tweet over the last few days. A lot of people have said similar. Tim Rideout, who at this point I do not have a clue who the man is, says they would not be deed if Israel had agreed a ceasefire and a hostage exchange for some of the 10,000 Palestinians held by Israel. I thought, he's got a weird way of looking at things. Absolutely nothing about these dead people being a bad thing, and blaming Israel. It's Israel's fault, because in his mind, he wants a hostage exchange, which would suggest Israel hold hostages. And 10,000 of them, apparently. But my understanding is these people are prisoners, which is quite a different thing. And I'm unsure if there's 10,000, but that's a debate for another day and for somebody else that cares, right? And that ain't me, right? So, but this guy has got this head on him that it's Israel's fault that the hostages. And these people who are in jails, now if you want to argue about the Israeli criminal justice system, then feel free. It's not my bag. I'm not interested, okay? But there are Palestinians in jails in Israel. How they got there, I don't know. Probably throwing bricks at soldiers and stuff like that, right? But this guy's got a slightly warped sense of justice. So I thought, well, who are you? So the first thing I done was I clicked on his Twitter X profile to find out he is an economist, a geographer, a cartographer, and founder of XYZ Maps. But the bit that caught my attention was he's the convener of the Scottish Currency Group, a non-government and non-profit organisation. So at this point, I started to search him. And I found this video, which is Tim Rideout on currency at the SNP conference. And this conference was obviously not that long ago, because Nicola Sturgeon is the First Minister, sitting at the top table, introducing him, as you'll see here.
Propose the amendment to be followed by Cameron Archbold.
This debate is about Scotland's control of its economic policy. The fact is that if we use sterling, our monetary policy, so that's the interest rate, the exchange rate, the money supply and the inflation rate, will all be set in London.
So that's him talking at the SNP conference a couple of years ago. And then I found another video where he does the same sort of talks all over the place. This one's at the Mitchell Library, the theatre they have in there.
Scotland doesn't have any debts because we're not allowed to have debts, because only adults are allowed to have debts. Do we have a deficit? Well, we don't know, because the JERS figures are a bit sort of, guesstimates. And in any case, as you're going to learn from our distinguished economists here, deficits don't matter. So who cares?
Right, so this guy who is supposedly, we would imagine, an economist himself, he wouldn't be sorting out the currency for us when we go independent, which according to him was to be happening in 2020. I caught him saying in one of his other tirades. We don't know if they're a deficit or not, because the JERS figures are just guesses. Now, the GERS figures are compiled by the Scottish Government, and a lot of people who are not cult members think they come from Westminster and they rob us blind, right? The figures are compiled by the Scottish Government and always have. And they're not accurate according to him, they're just guesses, right? And deficits don't matter. So there you go. Mind blowing, eh? Having a deficit, as in a shortfall between what you spend and what you bring in as a government, to this man, Tim Rideout, doesn't matter. This guy gives our government policy recommendations about currency, and deficits don't matter. There you are, right? So I thought, I need to find out more about this guy. As it turns out, he was banned for 6 months for anti-racist comments about Priti Patel, back in, as you can see, September 2022. He also, while he was banned, made some threats about attack dogs with Britnats, his dogs. And this was where he put out a tweet about some talk he was doing. And he was bringing a dog, and he showed a photograph of quite an aggressive dog. And he said, dogs there to get patted for supporters, but Britnats, it's there to bite you. You don't come. Right? What a shocking way to talk about people. However, the SNP being the SNP, while it suspended this policy advisor, he was hosting events for them, for their MPs and their MSPs. So they suspended him, but they didn't really suspend him. They just probably stopped taking his direct debit for 6 months, well, after his idiotic. He said that Priti Patel should go back to Uganda. Right? How do we get her back to Uganda was what he tweeted. But that doesn't matter to the SNP. They'll ban him for 6 months, but not really ban him. So I've also found a series of FOI requests and responses about Mr. Tim Rideout. Somebody had obviously requested to see emails between him and the Scottish Government, and there was quite a few of them. And around about the same time as he was suspended, because as you see here, it's September 2022, but he would have been suspended at that time because, so as you can see with the dates, just as he get back in, because he rejoined them in September 22, he starts writing a host of letters to Kate Forbes, who was then looking after finance. And some of the stuff in his letters is quite shocking, and that's what the crux of this video's about. So as you see, the first one I've put up here. Hi Kate. Sounds as if he's quite friendly with Kate Forbes. Hope all goes well with the baby, then you're not too tired from the disturbed nights. Okay. The fruitcakes have taken over the asylum down in London, but for Scotland, may I suggest, and he goes on to talk about free tuition and stuff like that, how to make things right. So this guy, who's already been, and he's just returned from a ban from talking about someone who was in government at the time, it's how you can send her back to their lander. It refers to him in a private email to Kate Forbes, Finance Minister at the time, as the fruitcakes have taken over the asylum down in London. That email finishes by a nice wee PS and a smiley face, saying to Kate Forbes, Finance Minister, about the new Scottish National Investment Bank opportunity. PS, I intend to apply for one of the non-executive directorships of the SNIB that have been advertised recently. First job I have applied for in the last 20 years. And a wee smiley face. I wonder why anyone who was an advisor would think it was important to tell the Finance Minister that he was applying for a role as a non-executive director in the new to be formed Scottish National Investment Bank. I will not guess, I'll leave you to come up with your own reasons. So the next thing I highlighted on an email was, he was telling, this is one of the ones to Kate Forbes, introduce a large tax and especially target big estates. They almost all vote Tory, and politically there is nothing to lose. this is an advisor to the SNP and indeed the Scottish Government, which is basically tax the Tories because they don't matter. You've nothing to lose politically. Another one that he sent to her, which was obviously around about the time of a budget, and please do the budget 50-50 in Gaelic and English without warning the BBC. Put something really important in the Gaelic part. I believe the Parliament has translation facilities, so you might as well use them. What an odious, odious creep of a man. This one, an absolute cracker. This was him responding to Kate Forbes when the Tories done some tax changes. You can make loads of political capital out of that in terms of nasty, grasping Tories penalising the working class and Scotland using its limited powers to try and correct an injustice. Unless London can find a way to prevent it, you will still get the Barnett share of the NI increase, but that would be a reason to only announce this in January at the budget, so they don't have much time for countermeasures. This is not advising the Scottish National Party or Scottish Government, in this case, on currency policy. This is advising them on public relations and fiscal policy. The next one. This shows you how crackers he is. I know sometimes you feel these people are specialists, so they just know best, but that's reality is they're pretty thick, right? This one's a cracker. The Bank of England is part of the government, so it is currently financing 100%. In fact, slightly more than that of the new borrowing. Now, I'm not sure if my memory serves me right, but I'm sure back in the good old days when we used to get taught arithmetic and mathematics as two separate subjects, I'm sure when my ears were working better, 100% is everything. You can't have more than 100%. So he says the Bank of England is currently financing slightly more than 100% of new borrowing. What sort of idiot thinks that's even possible? Never mind one that's meant to be an advisor in currency. It goes on. There's the next one. Fiscal rules should be consigned to the dustbin of history. So we shouldn't have rules on what we should do with the country's money. We should bin them all. This man is an absolute crank. I then came across something else, and this really isn't that important, but it gave me a wee bit of insight into his background and also told me a lot about this movement, right? So there's this movement called Independence Forum Scotland, Uniting the Independence Movement, and they're going to get everybody together. I mean, I've tried it before, all under one brolly or some shit like that, right? So this is a new one that's come up, right? And in the homepage of the website is just as a normal one, was like a wee bit about who they are. But this always tells me loads, right? You get a lot of it in like volunteer groups, but not uniquely to volunteer groups. Some non-volunteer groups do the same. Big businesses do the same. Well, the next page, the first page that you can click onto from their homepage is their About Us page, and it tells you about the committee, or the board, all these self-important people that think the most important thing on their website is tell us a bit about them, right? And guess what? This Independence Forum Scotland, go to the menu, drop down comes down, first thing you can click on, our committee, right? And guess who's listed? Yeah, this boy. Turns out, management committee member Dr. Tim Rideout was born in the Isle of Man and moved with his parents to South Africa in 1975, aged 13. He graduated from the University of Cape Town in Geography and Economics. He was required to leave South Africa in 1984 due to being anti-apartheid. He then started a Ph.D. in Edinburgh. Tim joined the SNP in 1988. He joined the Edinburgh mapmakers Bartholomew in 1991, then founded the XYZ Maps in 1998 with business partner Mark Fairbairn. He founded the Scottish Currency Group in 2019 to ensure Scotland has its own currency as soon as possible after independence. Tim lives near Edinburgh. This man's bonkers, right? This man will get on great in the SNP. because he's in a surrounding in a bubble full of bonkers. This man talks absolute drivel, right? This man thinks deficits doesn't matter. This man thinks that we should tax people that are just Tories more than anybody else. This man is a racist, this man is a crank, and this man is still body deep in the SNP. And they're welcome to him. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing and hitting the notifications bell. But most importantly of all, unless you're Tim, any of the people that believe his nonsense, or any of the remaining cult members in the SNP. See everyone else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.